Welcome back to Horns Eye Studios for another episode of 666 Seconds of Murder. That means each one of these videos is less than 666 seconds or 11 minutes and 6 seconds. So no time to waste. Let's get right to it. Now, don't forget to like the video. Drop a comment below so this video gets out there to more people. And if you're not a subscriber, please consider doing that to help this channel grow. I really appreciate it. Now, for this episode, I'd like to talk about our favorite prosecutor in the Idaho 4 case, Mr. William Thompson, also known to some of us as Santa or Billy, or probably a lot more names that are not very YouTube friendly. Now, I've mentioned it many times that this entire case in Latah County, Idaho is as incestuous as it gets. The common denominator is the fact that the University of Idaho, which is located there in Moscow, where the crimes occurred, is linked to nearly everyone involved in this case. Now, we know that Bill Thompson graduated from the University of Idaho College of Law in 1980. Judge John Judge graduated from there in 1984. And even the defense attorney, Ann Taylor, graduated from the law school there in 1998. Chief Fry is also an alum of the university, and many, many others. So it's easy to see that the ties to the university have all these people linked together. And when you see the hold that that school has on Moscow, it's no wonder the survey that the defense did showed that only 3% of the 400 Latah County residents that were surveyed didn't know much about this case. Only 3%. Wow. It's important to note that just having knowledge of a case doesn't mean that you can't serve on a jury. If you have a bias because of that knowledge, then you would, be prohibited from being on a jury. But in my opinion, the fact that nearly everyone in the county is either a graduate from the University of Idaho, an employee of the school, or working for an employer who would be negatively impacted by the university's demise is an indication that these people are all intertwined. That town would wither and die off the vine if U of I went away. So everyone in the county has a vested interest to toe the company line and want to put Bryan Kohberger in front of a firing squad. It's just that simple, in my opinion. Now, the hearing that recently happened was a learning experience for those of us who follow this case. We learned a lot of things. The biggest takeaway was when Bill Thompson was cross-examining that defense expert, Dr. Brian Edelman. He was the expert who headed up the survey that I mentioned. Now, I did a reaction video to that last week, so I'm not going to rehash this whole thing, but go check that out if you didn't see it. I'll try to remember to link to it below. I don't think Bill Thompson intended to let that slip, but he said that it was not true that Bryan Kohberger stalked the victims. And I was like, what? I couldn't believe it. I think everybody watching spit out whatever they might have had in their mouth at the time. Wow. How many times have we heard since Bryan Kohberger's arrest that he stalked at least one of the girls? To me, that seemed like the motive in the case. So if that's not true, then I ask, what is the motive here? Are they going to say that Bryan Kohberger played like eeny, meeny, miny, mo and just picked 1122 King Road just randomly? Are we to believe this PhD student who's been billed as the smartest guy in the room went into this random house with 6 cars in the parking lot with a knife? I mean, that is beyond absurd. So if it's not a stalking situation and it's not a random act, then what would be the motive for him to do this? I mean, some people have suspected that maybe Bryan was using substances again. So if we're going to assume that's true, I guess you could say it could have been related to that. I'm just not seeing him or anyone doing this by themselves. And I'm not seeing him working well like in a group situation. It just doesn't seem believable to me. And in this case, it seems that we run into brick walls of common sense like this. And when I hit one of those, I mean, I don't know about you, but when it doesn't add up, I'm very, very suspicious. And I think that's what most of us in the true crime community have in common. We're naturally skeptical of this kind of stuff. Now, maybe it's because I raised 2 kids, but you get pretty good at picking up on someone not telling you the truth. I mean, kids are good at that. You know, they're testing boundaries. And, you know, if one of my kids told me they woke up to 4 of their roommates, like the Idaho 4 case, and they didn't call 911 for 8 hours, I just wouldn't believe it. I would not believe it. And as an author, if I wrote a story and a character did that, it would jump off the pages as this huge issue. My editor would be like, what? That doesn't make any sense. So anyone with a shred of common sense in their body knows that that is complete and utter bullshit. So where does the prosecution go from here? If they really had the goods on Bryan Kohberger, it's likely they would have offered him a plea deal and not go through all of this and probably take the death penalty off the table in exchange, but that didn't happen. If they had some solid evidence, like video of his car pulling into King Drive on that morning when this happened, or some electronic device on his computer or phone that links him to these victims, or fingerprints, shoe impressions, anything. If they had it, then Bill Thompson wouldn't have melted down over a stupid survey that's routine anyway. Why would you make that your hill to die on unless you were desperate? This is a guy with more than 40 years of experience as an attorney. That's a long time, 40 years. He would have not let that survey, he would have just let that survey slide and just sat there grinning, knowing that he had the goods on Bryan Kohberger. But that didn't happen either. He made that stand because he can't bear the thought of putting on this carnival of a trial in anywhere but Latah County. He knows the deck is stacked there in his favor. That survey confirmed it, okay? And that's why he was pissed off. He knows that if he goes to another county, he loses that edge. He loses home field advantage. And if he has such solid evidence against that defendant, he should be able to put his case on anywhere in the world. What kills me is that Bill Thompson and Judge are so worried about information getting out there to taint the jury pool, but yet they don't do a damn thing when people like Nancy Grace and Ashley Banfield go on, an audience of millions putting out misinformation. It's just ridiculous, and tons of people believe that nonsense. So why are they so worried about 400 people in Latah County? It doesn't make any sense. They don't mind information getting out there that makes Bryan Kohberger look guilty and then whine and crying about Bryan's rights and when it comes to the survey. It's a huge double standard. We see through this nonsense. Now, if you're watching this and wondering why I didn't bring up the DNA, I did it for a reason. It's a joke. Our U.S. military doesn't allow the use of touch or transfer DNA in court. Australia won't allow that unless if the DNA is on something that can be picked up and moved. So that touch DNA on the knife sheath would not fly in Australia. Too many variables, too many ways it could have ended up there in their eyes. I've got a great new True Crime Deep Cuts I'm doing on this subject. I've got a former Australian police officer I'm going to be talking to with 15 years of experience working these true crime scenes, and we're going to discuss the Idaho 4 case in great detail. So I think you guys are going to like that. So let me know what you think about this one. Comment below, share your thoughts. You guys are always awesome about that, and I sure appreciate it. I do want to thank my friends at the Horns High Club. You guys are awesome. You rock, and I appreciate your support very much. And I appreciate the support of all of you guys that watch these videos. We'll see you next time for another episode of 666 Seconds of Murder.